I believe that the president probably doesn't personally know this person. I also believe
I didn't ask if he personally knew.
I also believe that the president was probably lobbied about this, and I believe that a group of advisors probably told him that
he knows
he was over-prosecuted by Biden.
Do you think he knows that his family is in business with his company?
I think he probably knows his family.
And you think that's okay? Do you think that's okay?
Smug MAGA pundit Scott Jennings was a guest on Abby Phillip show as part of a panel to discuss Donald Trump's pardoning of yet another criminal, a crypto billionaire. Of course, as you can imagine, Scott Jennings did what he always does on Abby Phillip show: deflect, spin, twist himself into logic pretzels to defend the dear leader. We're going to take a look at clips from Abby Phillip show with this panel, including Scott Jennings and others. I want to share my thoughts on this as well. Let's get into it together.
Pardon someone. I'm sure at the time he knew what it was, but I'm sure at the time that he did. Our question is, did Joe Biden even know he was pardoning anyone? And because the paper trail is so lax, like there's not the proof there that it needs to be done.
How do we jump to the conclusion that Joe Biden didn't know who he pardoned?
Because Jake Tapper wrote a book about how out of it that he was.
Okay, again, I'm going to ask, how do we jump to the conclusion that Joe Biden did not know who he pardoned, any of the people he pardoned, when Trump is literally on camera saying directly to a reporter, I don't know anything about
I think I answered that question, but here's one piece that we do need to really think about.
But I don't understand.
The process is so lax in these pardons. There's a lot of money, and President Biden's pardoned 4,200 people. And an average president does 400 per in his tenure. Who were all these people? This is big business. The dirty secret is pardons are big business in Washington.
Yeah,
they absolutely are.
I actually agree with you.
And we need to do a better job of knowing.
But let's not forget that Donald Trump signed blanket pardons for over 1,000 January 6th rioters, including people convicted of violent crimes. He did that. And then also in this particular case, you just mentioned the money involved, because there is money involved. Binance hired people to lobby Trump while they are also in business with Trump's family to the tune of hundreds of millions of dollars. Reuters just reported a couple of days ago, the president and his family raked in more than $800 million from sales of crypto assets in the first half of 2025 alone. Okay? That is literally a business that Trump is in with this guy who they just executed a pardon for. And then Trump says, I don't know anything about it. And that's okay?
Well, I think a few things could be true. One, I don't doubt one bit that President Trump isn't acquainted with the finer points of the crypto industry. I believe that. Number two, it's also true that presidents most often don't personally know the people that they're pardoning. And number three, Penny's right. People do pardon administrations lobby administrations for pardons often. I think that's probably what happened in this case. And I think there's probably a group of advisors who heard the plea and recommended it to the president.
So again, Trump says he doesn't know anything about it. This wasn't like a blanket pardon that was sent out to a bunch of people. It was one man on one day, lovely day in October, okay? One man, right? So you're telling me that Trump has no idea that he pardoned perhaps one of the most prominent people to ever be convicted in crypto, a business that his family is deeply embedded in. Again, you want us to believe that that is not something that he would know or understand.
No, I don't.
And that if he didn't know and understand it, that would be okay with you.
I don't want you to believe anything, and I'm certainly not acquainted with all the details of it. I'm just telling you that I believe that the president probably doesn't personally know this person. I also believe.
I didn't ask if he personally knew.
I also believe that the president was probably lobbied about this, and I believe that a group of advisors probably told him that
he knows
he was over-prosecuted by Biden.
Do you think he knows that his family is in business with his company?
I think he probably knows his family.
And you think that's okay? Do you think that's okay?
He got a recommendation.
Do you think that it's okay that he pardoned somebody that his family is right at this very moment in business with, and who shortly after that pardon sent out a message promoting the Trump family crypto business? You're okay with that?
No, it's totally above board, obviously.
Yeah. So the one MAGA person here, Penny Nance, does the standard MAGA thing. Yeah, but what about Biden? You know, their response to everything is, what about Biden? Donald Trump could do what he famously said early on in his political career when he said he could shoot somebody on Fifth Avenue and not lose any followers. If he shot somebody on Fifth Avenue, Scott Jennings and the other MAGA people would say, yeah, but what about Biden? I mean, that's their response to everything. But in terms of this pardoning thing, and I've said this multiple times in my videos, and, there are so many other things for Americans to worry about right now with this government shutdown. Literally people are worried about if they're going to be able to eat. Other people are worried about, are they going to be able to afford their health care? So the president's pardons aren't at the top of the list, but this is something that needs to be reined in. And when you have Scott Jennings just saying, more or less, who cares? The president probably didn't know this guy. I mean, think about that it's not bad enough that Donald Trump would pardon this guy who was convicted of serious crimes, of fraud. And he pardons him seemingly because he was a political ally and a business ally. But Donald Trump's response is, I didn't know the guy. And Scott Jennings thinks that that's better, that the president is pardoning a criminal. This isn't, I've said this over and over again in my videos, but to me, pardons should be for somebody goes to prison, for murder, and it turns out they were completely innocent. Somebody else did it. So, hey, we're going to let this person out because they were innocent. They didn't do anything wrong. Not somebody committed a crime and was convicted of it, but this person is the president's friend or their family member or their business ally or a donor to them. So they're going to be pardoning them. And they can say whatever they want about Biden. And I don't care if it's Biden or it's Trump or if it's the ghost of JFK pardoning somebody. They shouldn't be using pardons in this way. But of course, Scott Jennings, his role on Abby Phillip show and any other CNN or mainstream media show that he goes on is to spread misinformation, disinformation, and to defend the dear leader.
I mean, by
Obviously,
the way,
there's nothing to see here, guys.
A for effort. I mean, I want to let you both know. I mean, look, this was great. Nora O'Donnell was like asking a tough question, right? She was like, hey, so there's this guy, he goes by CZ, he's a national security risk, and he was like, moving money for Hamas. And you gave him a pardon, and Trump was like pretending like he was with his best friend. He's like, hey, listen to this. I don't even know the guy. I know nothing about it. I mean, somewhere, obviously James Comer, my dear friend, who spent millions of dollars on this AutoPen thing, is crying. When the speaker was asked this question, he looked like his IBS started to kick in front of the TV cameras. No, this undermines their entire message about Joe Biden, the AutoPen, and not knowing pardons. And the one thing we don't have about Joe Biden? We don't have him on camera being asked a question. Do you know about this pardon? And Joe Biden going, no, nothing about it.
You don't have
We got Trump. Sure. We got Trump right there for the American people to see. Trump going, no, don't know this guy, Zhao. Don't know anything about it.
It's true. You don't have Joe Biden on camera about much of anything the last 3 months.
Or even who he was at that point. So, yeah.
Look, let me. You made the point.
Joe Biden is not the president, Scott Jennings. Donald Trump is. It's really irrelevant at this point. Again, I don't think Joe Biden should have been pardoning family members and things like that, but it's irrelevant to what is happening now because Joe Biden is not the president, Donald Trump is, and we have not seen corruption on the level of what Donald Trump is doing. Any corruption that Joe Biden did pales in comparison to the just naked, raw corruption that we're seeing in Trump 2.0.
Point about Mike Johnson, because this has become a common refrain. He's asked about something that Trump says, it's all over the news, and apparently news doesn't get to Capitol Hill. Listen.
They're shut down.
I don't know anything about that. I didn't see the interview. You have to ask the president about that. I don't know any of the details of that yet. I just heard about that literally. I was walking in. I don't know the details about that. I've just read it. I didn't talk with him about that. I don't know the latest developments. That's first I've heard of that. I don't know anything about it. I don't know what you're talking about with the children. I haven't seen that, so I'm not going to comment on it.
I don't know. It just kind of undermines the idea that, that there's some righteous indignation about the wrongdoings of your political opponents. When any time that your guy is doing something that is questionable, it's like, oh, just haven't heard about it.
Oh, that goes both ways.
I'm sure. Yeah. By the way, it sure does.
We just came out of that, watching that whole
again,
show.
Like, the whole premise here is that this was so bad under Biden that it was, if they could have impeached him over it, they would have. They want to undo his presidential actions over this. And now Trump says, I don't even know who you're talking about. And, Mike Johnson says, well, sorry, I just haven't heard about it.
I don't know anything about that.
Well, there you go.
I don't know. I think it certainly does undercut the president's arguments and certainly his outbursts that we see on social media about the criminal family and these people who knew what, who did this. But I think the bigger question is that the president has repeatedly indicated that he is involved in these various kind of questionable endeavors. And sometimes he admits to it, sometimes he's very open about it, and other times he says things like, I don't know, I don't really know about crypto. I don't know if that's supposed to be plausible deniability or if it's something else entirely. But as we continue to see, and I think CNN has done really excellent reporting on this, as the president has continued on, these are questions that are becoming bigger and bigger. And part of what the president has done, and part of, I think, what Republicans in Congress have done too, is they've undermined their own argument because these are the same questions that they asked of the Biden administration, of Joe Biden's family. So now, I think it's only fair that you ask the same questions about the Trumps, about their endeavors, about their interests, about what's going on in terms of lobbying. And in essence, the president has set himself up for those very questions.
Well, I think one of the main questions left for the White House to answer is whether Trump did sign this pardon. If he doesn't know anything about it, was it a signature or was
And that's a great point that that Abby Phillip brings up there at the end is, you know, the MAGA types like Scott Jennings and this other lady here on Abby Phillip show. It's always Biden, Biden, Biden. What about Biden? Okay. Again, why would you hold your guy to the same standard as Biden, this guy that you thought was brain dead and wasn't doing anything? Your guy, Donald Trump, the God King, shouldn't he be well above that? Shouldn't it just be a given? Yeah, we think Joe Biden was terrible. Donald Trump is so much better than that. So he wouldn't just be doing an auto pen. He would actually understand who this guy is. You know what I mean? It's like, how is that an excuse? Oh, yeah, the other guy is terrible and my guy is terrible too, but the other guy was terrible also, you know? And what kind of judgment are you getting from a president who pardon somebody that he says that he doesn't even know who they are? How can you prop that person up, as Scott Jennings and the other MAGA people do night after night on Abby Phillip show? How can you prop that guy up as this great, wonderful president when he doesn't even know what he's doing? Again, it's a logic pretzel that they twist themselves into night after night on Abby Phillip show, but it's always going to be, yeah, but what about Biden? Yeah, but what about Democrats? You know, I wish that you could actually have, as Abby Phillip is trying to do here, more or less, both sides have the Scott Jennings MAGA types and then the people who are centrist Democrats on the left, whatever term you want to use, have them saying, yeah, we don't care who the president is. We can't have them pardoning people who are actual criminals and people that they don't know who they are. I just wish we could be in a sane society where we could have people on both sides say, yeah, we can't have this continue. They can't be pardoning their friends and their family members and their donors who actually committed crimes. But let me know what you think. Are you on the side of Abby Phillip here? Or are you on the side of Smug, Scott Jennings, mugging for the camera over and over again? Let me know in the comments what you think. Make sure to give me a like and subscribe. I'm Chris on Culture, and I will see you in the next video.